The Autism Society of America and all of its affiliates are highly nonpartisan and will never endorse any candidate for elected office. Rather, we attempt to educate people on the issues impacting individuals and families impacted by autism, including letting them know what positions elected officials, as well as those seeking such office, may or may not take on various public policy and legislative issues. The Autism Society will provide any declared candidate running for presidency who's securing at least 1% support in national polls equal time to any other candidate to appear on this show and discuss their plans. They also may choose to have a representative speak on their behalf. The Autism Society of America will not allow any speaker at any Autism Society event or on this show to speak harmful words against any other candidate or use the time with the Autism Society to suggest, imply, or state that the Autism Society is supportive of their candidacy.
Thank you very much for having me on your program, and thank you personally for doing this. We all really appreciate the fact that you're so involved and so committed. That helps us.
It's my pleasure to help. We're excited to have you, and I know our audience would love to know how you became so involved with national disability issues and sort of what led you to this point.
Unlike a lot of other people that disability comes on you. When I was 16 years old, I had an automobile accident and hit my head. A year later, I started having seizures. My doctor was called out the first time that I had a seizure. I was in our family dairy barn milking cows, and when I woke up, I was laying on the bed, and my doctor was actually sitting on me, which is rather an interesting way to do medicine, but in a rural town in California, that's probably the way they did it. But my family and the doctor were talking. I could hear them, but I couldn't speak. And finally, when I could speak, I said, "What's happened?" And the doctor said, "You passed out." So that was it. I didn't know anything else, and they were going to take me to other doctors. And so I went to 3 other doctors, and I didn't know what the doctors told my family. Of course, later I did. But my family comes from a Catholic background, Portuguese Americans. Mm-hmm. And these doctors were telling them that I had epilepsy. Family thought that if you had epilepsy, that meant that you're possessed by the devil. That's obviously something that we in the epilepsy movement deal with a lot. People feel that there are evil spirits involved. And so after going to these doctors, then I went to witch doctors. I went through 3 witch doctors that basically, different ones, but basically who would burn candles on my chest, pour hot oil over my forehead and my chest, and speak different tongues. And finally, after the 3rd one, I finally said I wasn't going to go anymore. I was 18, and I just said no. That upset my family, but I continued having my quote-unquote passing out spells. I then, my high school superintendent said basically I had to get out of town, go someplace where I couldn't milk cows every weekend or every night. And so I went to Loyola University in Los Angeles, a Jesuit Catholic school, and I continued having my seizures. I just thought it was like having a severe headache or anything else that somebody might have. And then I was very active, student body president, outstanding senior, and I decided as a result of John Kennedy's assassination that I wanted to become a Catholic priest and that I wanted to help other people. He gave up his life, and I thought that's what I wanted to do. It was very idealistic in those days. Mm-hmm. And so when I graduated, I entered the Jesuit seminary, and I had a physical. And the doctor said to me after the physical, said, "Have you ever had any passing out spells or headaches?" I said, "All the time." And he said, "Has anybody ever talked to you about epilepsy?" And I said, "No, I never heard the word." He said, "Well, you have it. And I have some good news and bad news. The good news is that you're 4F, 1964, and that means you're not serving in the military. Number 2, canon law established in 400 AD said that if you had epilepsy or possessed by the devil, you could not be a Catholic priest. So I was rejected. Called my family, told them that I was excited about the fact that I knew what my problem was, and I told them that I had epilepsy, and they immediately reacted very strongly, said no son of ours does, and that sort of set the stage for a negative relationship with my family for years. Then I realized that the impact was going to be greater because my driver's license was taken away. Doctors have to inform the authorities. My insurance was taken away. In Los Angeles, I still had to drive, so I drove without a license. And then I started going to places for jobs. When I was student body president, I had about 60 different job offers. And so I started going to these places for interviews. And every application was the word epilepsy. And I, of course, checked it. I would not lie. And I didn't get anywhere, didn't get any jobs, didn't really get even to a real interview. And so I then started drinking every day, and I felt sorry for myself. Everything I'd ever loved in my life, my family, my church, everything about me, all of a sudden became a negative. And I thought God and everybody had turned against me. And so I started drinking, was drinking heavily every day. I was drunk by 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was on the mountaintop in a park in Los Angeles, Griffith Park. Doesn't have any mountains, but when you're drinking, you think they're big mountains. And so, but I was on the top of this hill drinking one day. I heard music, and the music said to me, and in fact, something said to me, you're going to be just like those little kids on that merry-go-round at the bottom of the hill. And you're going to be positive. You're never going to let anybody stop you again from believing in yourself. And that was it. From that day forward to this day, I was 21 and I'm now 73. And I've never let anybody stop me from doing what I really strongly believed in.
Well, it seems that way because you made quite a mark in Congress with, as we said before, the Americans with Disabilities Act. That's a very, very important piece of civil rights legislation. Was your personal story the impetus for wanting to see that written and implemented within the United States?
Yes, what happened is that a result of all my rejection and so forth, I realized I went to work as a staffer, and I got my congressman from Fresno, Merced area, California, to understand, and he was very, very positive about my epilepsy and so forth, and I eventually worked myself up to chief of staff, and then when he retired, I took his place. My commitment was to take care of the needs of my congressional district, but my really ministry was going to be disabilities. And so I got very involved in amending different bills and so forth. And then I realized that that wasn't enough. I had to deal with the overall issue of disabilities. And so there was work being done in drafting legislation. The Reagan administration was, the advocates were, and so there were all kinds of things going on. So basically what ended up was Senator Weicker of Connecticut and I introduced the ADA.
Well, you know, I don't mean to cut you off, Tony, but we now learn that you are involved with Secretary Clinton's campaign for presidency, and we're very curious to know how it is that you became involved with her and what your involvement with her campaign is. We know that there's a plan that she is sponsoring, the autism plan, and I'd love to hear about that. I'm sure that our viewers are very curious about your take on that and how it is that you did become involved.
Well, I was very close to President Clinton and Hilary at the time that he served, and I was appointed to a lot of different things for them. I became chairman of the President's Committee to hire people with disabilities and also co-chair of the task force to hire adults with disabilities. And so I got very involved at that particular time with the Clintons, both of them, in regards to making a difference. And we did several things at that point, and primarily in employment with the President Clinton. And so when this effort started off about Hillary running, they asked if I would be helpful. And I said yes, as long as I could deal with the disability community. I wanted to set up a community like the Every Campaign has for women, gays, labor, vets, you name it, all these different communities. And disability community had never been recognized that way. And so I basically said I would help as long as we could set up a disability community for Hilary. And so we have. And it's exciting to be involved. And we helped in regards to the autism proposal. And she is working on a mental health proposal now, and we're helping on that. And so we have a whole group in the disability community that are aggressively involved. And this is exciting that we can make a difference in regards to disabilities if she gets elected. If she doesn't get elected, I hope that our efforts are so successful that every presidential campaign from now on would have a disability community. And that way we would be at the decision-making table, not only in campaigns, but once that person gets elected to office.
Fantastic.
So when Hilary gets elected, I'm very enthusiastic about what she will do for all of us with disabilities, and the program that she's come up with, Alzheimer's and now autism, are fantastic, complete, thorough proposals that will make a difference, and that's really exciting to me.
Well, I'd like to talk about the plan in a moment and go over sort of the four main points of it, but I'm curious to know, if Secretary Clinton is elected president, would you be part of her administration? What are your plans?
No, ma'am. No. I'm 73.
73 years young.
Yeah, that's, I agree with that. But, I was in the Congress. I was in the leadership. I was very active with President Clinton after I left Congress on all kinds of different issues. I'm very involved with President Obama and Valerie Jarrett, his main person, on disability issues and so forth. And I love being that. Disabilities is my passion, is my ministry. And I love that. But I really want other people to take it on. And I will be advocate. I'll be my ministry until the day I die. But I want other people to get involved and engage, and I'll help in every possible way. I will tell you this: when she gets elected, I will make sure that any appointments to the Supreme Court, that whoever gets appointed by her will be an advocate for those of us with disabilities.
Okay.
I think that's really critical.
The Autism Society of America and all of its affiliates are highly nonpartisan and will never endorse any candidate for elected office. Rather, we attempt to educate people on the issues impacting individuals and families impacted by autism, including letting them know what positions elected officials, as well as those seeking such office, may or may not take on various public policy and legislative issues. The Autism Society will provide any declared candidate running for presidency who's securing at least 1% support in national polls equal time to any other candidate to appear on this show and discuss their plans. They also may choose to have a representative speak on their behalf. The Autism Society of America will not allow any speaker at any Autism Society event or on this show to speak harmful words against any other candidate or use the time with the Autism Society to suggest, imply, or state that the Autism Society is supportive of their candidacy.